The great arena of the Zeran Dominion was filled with noise and light. Countless alien races had gathered inside the massive structure, their voices blending into a storm of excitement. For them, this was more than entertainment. It was tradition, honor, and pride. Warriors from different worlds came here to prove themselves. Today, however, the crowd had gathered for something unusual. An alien princess who had never been defeated would fight against a human, a species most of the galaxy still considered weak. Liara, the warrior princess of the Zerans, stood tall in her ceremonial armor. Her body was built with power, each muscle shaped from years of combat training. Her reputation was legendary. She had crushed challengers twice her size, disarmed assassins with bare hands, and silenced doubters with a single swing of her blade. When she raised her arms to acknowledge the crowd, thousands of voices shouted her name. She believed victory today would be quick and simple. After all, she was facing a human. When Daniel Rourke stepped into the arena, the reaction from the crowd was mixed. Some booed, some laughed, and some watched with curiosity. He was not covered in thick armor or exotic weapons. He wore simple battle gear, light enough for movement but strong enough to take a hit. He looked ordinary compared to the towering princess. His body was lean, his skin scarred from old wounds, and his eyes calm like still water. He walked with steady steps, not slow, not fast, but with the confidence of a man who had seen many battles before this one. Liara studied him from across the arena. His calm expression irritated her. Most challengers trembled when they saw her, but he showed no fear. She wondered if this was arrogance or ignorance. She told herself it did not matter. A human could not withstand her strength. The announcer's voice echoed through the arena, speaking in a language translated into many tongues. It declared the rules: no weapons beyond personal arms, no interference, and no retreat. Only one would leave the arena as victor. The signal was given, and silence spread as the duel was about to begin. Liara moved first. Her blade cut through the air with speed and power, aimed directly at Daniel's chest. The crowd gasped, expecting the human to fall in the opening strike. But Daniel stepped aside, letting the blade pass within inches of him. His movements were precise, not rushed. He did not counter, only observed. Liara pressed forward, her strikes growing faster. Each swing was heavy, enough to break bones or crush armor, but Daniel kept slipping away. He dodged, blocked with his forearm guard, and shifted his footing with uncanny timing. To the crowd, it looked like survival. To Liara, it felt like something more dangerous. He was not running. He was watching. Minutes passed, and Liara's frustration began to grow. She had expected him to crumble under the weight of her attacks, but instead he moved with patience. She could feel his eyes on her, reading her movements, learning her rhythm. He was like a predator hiding behind calm eyes, waiting for the right moment. The crowd roared each time she swung, but whispers spread among the front rows. Some began to notice the human's strange focus. He had not struck yet, but he was not losing. His breathing was steady, his posture never breaking. He was conserving his strength, playing a long game. Liara grinned through her irritation. She respected warriors who lasted more than a few minutes. Perhaps she would give this human a slower defeat, to remind him of the difference between their species. She attacked again, her strikes shaking the ground beneath them. Sparks flew as her blade struck against his guard. He slid back but did not fall. His eyes never left hers. Daniel remembered other battles, far from this arena. He remembered nights under broken skies, fighting enemies who outnumbered him 10-1. He remembered cold hunger, endless marches, and comrades who refused to surrender even when hope was gone. He carried those memories like armor. This alien warrior was strong, yes, but strength alone was not enough to break him. Humanity had always survived the impossible, and he was here to remind the galaxy why. The first part of the duel ended without a clear victor. Liara had struck again and again, but Daniel stood tall, untouched by fear. The crowd erupted in mixed cries of excitement and confusion. They had expected a quick ending, but instead, they saw a contest forming. Liara tightened her grip on her weapon, her pride burning. Daniel adjusted his stance, calm as ever, his eyes sharp. In that moment, everyone in the arena understood one thing. This would not be an easy fight. The human had come prepared, and the alien princess was about to learn that underestimating him was her first mistake. The signal to continue echoed across the arena, and the second stage of the duel began. Liara adjusted her stance, her pride wounded by the fact that a human still stood against her. She told herself that this was only the beginning, that soon he would tire and crumble. Her people believed humans were fragile creatures, clever with machines but weak in body. She had to prove that belief true. Daniel Rourke stood opposite her, breathing steady, his hands loose at his sides. He had taken the measure of her first wave. She was strong, stronger than almost any opponent he had ever faced. Her blade could cut through steel, her strikes carried the weight of thunder, but she made mistakes. He saw them in her footwork, in the way her temper rose when her attacks failed to land. He knew she relied on power to overwhelm, not patience to endure. That was something he could use. Liara moved first again, her pride refusing to wait. She lunged forward with a speed that surprised even her spectators. Her blade arced down toward Daniel's shoulder, but he turned with the strike, letting the edge scrape across his armor instead of cutting deep. Pain rippled through his arm, but he ignored it, stepping into her movement instead of retreating. With a sudden twist, he raised his forearm and struck her exposed ribs. The impact was not heavy, but it shocked her. No one had touched her in a duel for years. The crowd gasped as Liara stumbled back, eyes widening with anger. She had felt the strike. It had not injured her, but it had broken the illusion of invincibility she carried into the fight. She growled, her voice echoing across the arena, and swung again, faster and wilder. Daniel ducked, parried, and rolled away, his body moving with practiced precision. He did not rush after her. He waited, forcing her to waste her strength. Each clash grew louder, sparks flying as steel met steel. Liara's swing shook the ground while Daniel's steps made no sound at all. He was a shadow, always moving just enough to escape her reach. The crowd began to notice. The human was not merely surviving, he was adapting. With every dodge, every block, he grew sharper. Liara felt sweat forming under her armor. She could not remember the last time she had felt her muscles ache in a duel. She told herself it was because she was toying with him, but deep inside she knew the truth. He was making her work harder than she expected. Her pride kept her pushing forward, but her instincts whispered caution. Daniel's mind was calm. He had been in wars where hesitation meant death, where one mistake ended lives. Against Liara, he could feel the same truth. She was faster, stronger, but she had never been forced into a long fight. He could see her frustration, the way her strikes grew reckless. He only needed to last until her control slipped. The duel slowed for a moment, both fighters circling one another. Dust floated, in the air, caught in the beams of the arena's lights. The crowd sat in silence, torn between loyalty to their princess and fascination with the human who refused to fall. Liara lunged again, her blade thrusting toward Daniel's chest. He sidestepped, letting the blade scrape past, and used the opening to drive his shoulder into her. The impact forced her back a step. She snarled, swinging the flat of her blade at his head, but he ducked beneath it, his hand brushing the ground for balance before springing back upright. For a brief instant, their eyes met. Hers burned with fury, his with calm fire. That moment carried more weight than the strikes themselves. The crowd saw it too. The human was not afraid. He was determined. Liara shouted, her voice shaking the arena walls, and attacked with renewed. She struck from high, from low, from every angle. Sparks flashed with every block. Daniel's guard held, his arms aching, but his focus never wavered. He could feel the rhythm of her breathing, the growing weight in her steps. She was tiring, even if she refused to admit it. Minutes stretched like hours. The audience could barely breathe as they watched strength crash against resilience. Liara's swing slowed, and Daniel began to move closer, no longer just dodging but countering. A strike to her arm, a push to her chest, a sweep at her leg. None of them were enough to bring her down, but each reminded her that he was not weak, prey. Finally, Liara forced him back with a heavy downward strike, her blade biting into the arena floor. The ground cracked beneath them, dust exploding into the air. Daniel jumped back, his chest heaving from the effort, but his stance remained steady. Liara pulled her blade free, her breathing ragged. The crowd erupted in cries of disbelief. Their princess, the warrior who had never been matched, was showing signs of strain. The human stood tall, blood on his arm but fire in his eyes. In that moment, everyone watching realized the truth. This was not a fight between predator and prey. This was a battle between two warriors, and the human, though wounded, showed no sign of surrender. The arena floor was covered in cracks and dust, scars from the furious battle. The crowd's voices rose and fell in waves of disbelief. Never before had they seen their warrior princess pushed so far. Liara's chest heaved as she held her blade, ready, her arms heavy from the endless strikes she had unleashed. She had always ended her duels within minutes, but now time stretched on, and her pride burned hotter with every passing second. Daniel Rourke stood across from her, his body bruised and bloodied, but his eyes calm and sharp. His chest rose and fell with heavy breaths, yet his stance never faltered. He looked as if he had accepted the pain, embraced it, and made it fuel his strength. He was not the fragile creature Liara had believed he would be. He was something else, something dangerous. Liara tightened her grip on her weapon. She told herself that she could still break him with one decisive blow, that this human was only standing because she had not yet shown her full might. She raised her blade and roared, charging forward with a strike meant to crush him completely. The crowd cheered as her weapon came down like lightning. Daniel braced himself. He shifted his stance at the last second, letting the blade slam into the ground beside him. The impact shook the floor, sending dust into the air, but he had already moved. His elbow struck her side, followed by a swift kick to her leg. It was not enough to topple her, but it forced her balance to break. She stumbled back a step, her eyes narrowing in fury. The human pressed forward, not with reckless strength, but with precision. Every strike he made was aimed at her weaknesses, her ribs when she left them open, her arms when they dropped too low, her legs when she planted them too firmly. None of his attacks were strong enough to defeat her outright, but together they carved small cracks in her defense. Liara felt her frustration rising. She swung her blade again and again, each movement fueled by her pride and anger. Yet every time, the human slipped away or countered with sharp timing. He was like water, flowing where she struck, never breaking, but always wearing her down. The audience grew silent as they realized what was happening. Their princess, who had won countless battles with sheer power, was being tested in a way she had never known. The human was not the strongest, not the fastest, but he refused to yield, and that refusal began to unsettle her. Liara's breathing grew heavy. Her arms felt heavier with each swing. She hated to admit it, but she could feel exhaustion creeping into her muscles. She was not used to such long duels. She had always ended them quickly, her opponents never lasting long enough to test her endurance. But this human was different. He endured everything she threw at him, and still he stood, eyes burning with that quiet fire. Daniel could see the change in her. Her strikes slowed, her footwork grew less precise, and her rage clouded her focus. He had seen it before, in soldiers, who thought victory was already theirs, only to crumble when the battle stretched too long. He thought of his comrades back on Earth, men and women who fought not because they were stronger, but because they refused to die quietly. Humanity's strength was not in muscle or size. It was in willpower. That willpower was what carried him now. Liara attacked again, but this time Daniel met her strike with his own blade, the clash ringing out like thunder. Sparks flew, and both fighters pushed against each other, locked in a contest of strength. Liara expected him to break under her power, but he did not. His arms shook, his teeth clenched, but he held firm. Slowly, he pushed back, forcing her to step away. The crowd erupted in shock. To see a human hold his ground against their princess was unthinkable. Whispers spread through the stands, questions rising about who this man truly was. Liara stared at him, her chest rising and falling. Rapidly, she could not deny what she saw. This was no ordinary human. This was a warrior forged in battles far harsher than anything she had known. She began to realize that her strength alone might not be enough. Daniel wiped blood from his mouth and straightened his stance. He said nothing, but his eyes spoke for him. They told her that he would not stop, that no matter how many times she struck him down, he would rise again. That silent message struck her deeper than any blade. For the first time in years, Liara felt doubt. It was a small spark, buried under layers of pride, but it was there. She tightened her grip on her weapon, trying to silence the thought, but it lingered. Could she really defeat him? Could she break the will of a man who had already survived everything she had thrown at him? The duel was far from over, but the balance had begun to shift. The human had proven he was no easy prey. He had shown her something she had never expected to see in a fight: unyielding resolve. And that was more dangerous than any weapon she had ever faced. Dust drifted in the air as the two warriors faced each other again. Liara's chest rose and fell with uneven breaths, her body heavy from the endless strikes she had delivered. She had thought this duel would be swift, yet here she stood, sweat running down her skin, her arms aching. Across from her the human remained. His body bore cuts and bruises. His armor was dented and blood stained his arm, but his stance was unshaken. His eyes never wavered, and that calm, burning stare unsettled her more than any wound he had given. The crowd grew restless. Many had believed the fight would already be over, that their princess would have crushed the challenger. Instead, whispers spread through the seats. Some began to wonder if the human could actually win. It was a thought few dared to voice, but the duel before their eyes forced it into their minds. Liara snarled and tightened her grip. Her pride would not let her fall back. She lunged again, swinging her blade in a heavy arc. The strike came fast and strong, enough to tear through stone, but Daniel shifted aside with practiced ease. His own weapon struck back, not with crushing force, but with sharp precision, landing against her wrist. The blow stung and forced her grip to tighten, a reminder that he was studying her, learning her patterns with every exchange. He circled her like a hunter, calm and steady. Liara attacked again, her blade slicing through the air, but each time he slipped away. His counters grew sharper, his timing more exact. He was no longer only defending. He was pressing forward, step by step, forcing her to react. The crowd leaned closer, their voices hushed. They could see the change too. Their princess, always the aggressor, was now being drawn into a dance she could not control. Daniel moved like water, flowing past her strikes and answering with his own. Every cut, every push, every small strike added pressure. Liara's pride burned hotter with each passing moment. She roared, trying to crush him under her strength, but the harder she fought, the calmer he became. His eyes never left her, and within them she saw no fear, no hesitation, only resolve. It was the gaze of someone who had fought countless battles before this one, someone who had survived too much to ever bow. Her strikes grew reckless. Daniel caught her rhythm, and when she overextended with a heavy swing, he stepped in close. His fist slammed into her ribs, making her stumble back with a grunt of pain. The crowd gasped loudly. Their princess had been driven back by a human's strike. It was unthinkable, and yet it had just happened before their eyes. Liara's breathing grew harsher, her frustration mixing with confusion. She was stronger, faster, trained from birth to fight, but she could not bend him. Every time she thought she had broken through, he endured. Every time she pressed harder, he found a way to resist. It was like trying to shatter stone with bare hands. Daniel, too, felt the weight of the duel. His arms ached, his body screamed with pain, but he pushed it aside. He remembered nights of fire and war, comrades who had stood beside him until the end. He remembered promises to never surrender, no matter how impossible the odds. That spirit carried him now, and he knew it was something this alien princess had never faced before. For the first time, Liara hesitated. It was only a heartbeat, a small pause as doubt flickered through her. But Daniel saw it. He struck again, his blade clashing with hers, and drove her back another step. The crowd erupted with noise, half cheering, half shouting in disbelief. The human was not only surviving, he was beginning to win ground. Liara growled, forcing her doubt deep inside. She attacked again, but her strikes no longer carried the same certainty. Daniel deflected, parried, and countered, his movements smooth and relentless. Step by step he pulled her into his rhythm, and the crowd watched as the duel slowly shifted. Her pride demanded victory, but her body betrayed her. Sweat stung her eyes, her grip faltered for the briefest moments, and her breathing grew ragged. Every weakness, no matter how small, Daniel found and pressed. He did not fight with the fury of a beast, but with the patience of a soldier who had endured too much to waste energy. The arena, once filled with laughter and cheers for their princess, now grew tense and uncertain. The sight of her stumbling, under the weight of the human's counters, planted a seed of doubt in every spectator's mind. Could the unbeatable warrior actually fall? Liara felt the same fear clawing at her. She hated it, refused to accept it, but it was there. This human was showing her something she had never known in all her battles. Strength was not only muscle and power, it was will, and his will was unbreakable. Daniel stepped forward again, his strikes faster now, his body moving with controlled fury. Liara blocked, but each clash sent vibrations through her arms. Her weapon felt heavier with every exchange, while his eyes never dimmed. When their blades locked again, he leaned close, his voice low so only she could hear. "You can't break me," he said, his tone calm but sharp as steel. The words shook her more than the strike itself. She shoved him back, but his voice lingered in her ears. For the first time in her life, she realized she might lose. The crowd erupted, the sound of thousands rising like thunder. What had begun as a simple duel of pride was now something greater. The human was not just surviving. He was showing the galaxy what it meant to be unyielding. And Liara, once so certain of her easy victory, now felt the shadow of defeat closing in. The air inside the arena grew heavy with tension. Dust floated in beams of light above the cracked floor. The crowd, once loud and certain of their princess's victory, now sat in unease. They had watched Liara stumble, something they had never seen before. And across from her stood the human, wounded yet unbroken, his eyes burning with quiet fire. Liara's pride felt as if it were under attack as much as her body. She had never been forced this far in any duel. Her arms ached, her breathing was ragged, and doubt whispered at the edges of her mind. She hated that feeling, hated the thought that she could be matched by someone from a species her people mocked as fragile. She clenched her jaw and forced the doubt down. She could not allow this. She was the warrior princess of the Zeran Dominion, and she would not fall before a human. Her voice rang out across the arena in a defiant roar. She lifted her blade high, and with a burst of energy, she surged forward. Her movements grew faster, more savage, as if she had unlocked strength she had held back until now. The crowd rose to their feet, shouting her name, cheering as their princess revealed her full power. Her strikes tore through the air like storms, every swing carrying enough force to crush stone. Daniel braced himself. Each impact against his guard rattled his bones, each dodge came closer to failure. Sweat poured down his face, blood dripped from his arm, and pain screamed through his body, but he did not give in. He moved with sharp focus, letting instinct guide him. He could feel the weight of her fury, but he also felt the rhythm of her attacks. She was faster, yes, but she was burning her strength quickly. The crowd roared at the sight of her fury, but then their voices shifted as they noticed something strange. No matter how hard Liara struck, the human did not fall. His armor bent, his body shook, but his eyes never dimmed. He fought with a stubbornness that defied reason. He was no longer only defending, he was enduring, each moment turning her strength into her weakness. Liara's strikes landed again and again, sparks flying with every clash. Daniel's body screamed with pain, but he pressed forward. He countered with sharp blows, striking her arm, her leg, her side. None of his attacks were enough to defeat her outright, but they wore her down. The more she pressed, the more openings she left. He waited for those moments, and he took them without hesitation. At one point, her blade came down hard, slamming into his guard with such force that the ground cracked beneath his feet. The crowd gasped, certain he would fall. But Daniel gritted his teeth, muscles straining, and shoved back against her. The clash rang out like thunder, and to everyone's shock, it was Liara who staggered a step. The silence that followed was heavy. A human had stood against the full force of their princess and held. Whispers spread through the stands, disbelief turning into awe. Liara's pride burned hotter than her muscles. She snarled and attacked again, but her arms were slowing. Daniel could see it. Every strike came a fraction later, every step a little heavier. He remembered the wars of Earth, the endless marches, the battles fought until bodies collapsed. Humanity had been shaped by struggle, by endurance. And here, in this alien arena, he carried that spirit with him. The duel turned into a storm of steel and dust. Liara's fury clashed with Daniel's resolve, each strike echoing across the walls. The arena floor cracked beneath their feet, debris scattering with every movement. Yet through it all, Daniel's eyes remained steady. His willpower was unshaken, his spirit unbroken. Liara felt it. For the first time in her life, her power was not enough. She could crush stone, she could tear through enemies, but she could not break him. Each time she thought he would fall, he rose again. Each time she thought she had cornered him, he found a way to resist. It was as if the more she struck him, the stronger his spirit became. Her pride clashed with fear. She had thought this would be an easy fight, a simple display of dominance. Instead, it had become a test of her very soul. She had unleashed everything, and still he stood. The human was not stronger than her, but he was something she could not understand, unyielding. The crowd's voices grew louder, no longer chanting, only her name. They shouted for the duel itself, for the clash that defied expectation. And among them were voices that whispered with awe about the human, the warrior who refused to fall. Liara's final flurry of strikes ended in exhaustion. Her chest heaved, her body trembling, her arms heavy as lead. She had poured her strength into the fight, yet Daniel still stood. Blood dripped from his wounds, his breath came in ragged gasps, but he remained upright, weapon in hand, eyes burning. For the first time in her life, Liara felt fear, not of death but of defeat. The human had shown her something she had never believed possible. Strength of will greater than strength of body. The duel was not over, but in that moment, the balance had shifted. The alien princess had unleashed her full power, yet the human endured. And as the crowd watched in stunned silence, they realized that this fight was no longer about strength alone. It was about something greater. Daniel's spirit had turned, the tide. And Liara, once so certain of her easy victory, now stood face to face with the truth. Humans could not be broken. The arena was silent except for the sound of heavy breathing. Liara stood with her blade lowered, her chest rising and falling as if the weight of the galaxy pressed against her. Her armor bore dents, her arms trembled, and her once proud stance now showed cracks of exhaustion. Across from her, Daniel Rourke still stood, blood dripping from his wounds, his face pale with strain, but his eyes burned brighter than ever. He looked like a man who had already accepted pain as part of him, as natural as the air he breathed. The crowd had stopped cheering. The chants of Liara's name had faded into whispers. No one had expected this fight to last so long. No one had expected the human to endure what should have been impossible. The alien spectators, once laughing at the idea of a human warrior, now leaned forward with wide eyes, waiting to see what would happen next. Liara gritted her teeth and forced herself to straighten. She could not let her people see her falter. Pride demanded she fight until the very end. Raising her blade once more, she stepped forward, but her movement was slower than before. Daniel noticed. He had been watching her closely, every swing, every step, every breath. Now he saw the truth. Her strength was fading. He adjusted his stance, grounding himself. This was the moment he had been waiting for. His body screamed with pain, every muscle begging him to stop, but his mind refused. He had endured worse than this, he told himself. Humanity had endured worse. Liara charged with a cry, her blade sweeping toward him. Daniel caught the strike, the force rattling his bones, but he held firm. Sparks flew as their weapons clashed. He pushed forward, driving her back. She tried to swing again, but her arm faltered, just for a heartbeat. Daniel seized the opening. He stepped in close, his elbow slamming into her shoulder, knocking her off balance. The crowd gasped as Liara stumbled. Daniel pressed forward, his strikes faster now, sharper. He no longer moved only to survive. He moved to win. His blade cut across her defenses, striking her arm, her side, her legs. Each blow carried precision, not strength, but they wore her down further. She tried to counter, but her swings grew desperate, wild, her pride forcing her body past its limits. Liara roared and struck down hard, her blade carving into the floor as Daniel sidestepped. The weapon stuck for the briefest moment, and Daniel struck her wrist with all his strength. The blade slipped from her grasp, clattering to the ground. The arena erupted with shock. For the first time, the undefeated princess stood unarmed. Her eyes widened, her pride shattering as the human pressed his advantage. Daniel's weapon rose, then stopped just before her throat. The silence that followed was deafening. Every spectator leaned forward, holding their breath. Liara froze, her chest heaving, her pride demanding she fight, but her body refusing. Daniel's blade hovered close, the victory his if he wished to take it, yet he did not strike. Instead, he stepped back, lowering his weapon. His eyes met hers, calm and steady. The act stunned her more than the loss of her weapon. He had defeated her, yet he chose not to humiliate her. He had shown mercy where most warriors would have sought glory. The crowd broke into a roar, voices clashing in disbelief and amazement. Some shouted in anger that their princess had fallen, others in awe of the human's victory. But one truth echoed above all others. The human had done the impossible. Liara sank to one knee, her body trembling with exhaustion. She looked up at Daniel, her pride burning, yet beneath it something else stirred. Respect. He had faced her full power, had endured her strength, and had stood unbroken. No one had ever forced her to such limits. No one had ever shown her that strength could exist beyond muscle and power. Daniel extended a hand toward her. The gesture was simple, but it carried weight heavier than any blade. It was not the hand of an enemy, but of a warrior offering respect to another. Liara stared at it for a long moment, her pride resisting, but her heart acknowledging the truth. At last she reached out and took it, letting him help her to her feet. The arena shook with noise, thousands of voices rising as one. What had started as a contest of arrogance had become something far greater. A human had stood against the might of the Zaran princess and had not only survived but triumphed. Liara raised her chin, meeting the eyes of her people. Though she had lost, she would not hide. Her voice carried across the arena, strong despite her exhaustion. "This human," she said, "is no weak creature. He is a warrior." The words rippled through the crowd like fire. They had come to see their champion crush a fragile species. Instead, they had witnessed proof that humans were not to be underestimated. Daniel's name would spread across the stars after this day, carried by whispers and shouts alike. As Liara stood beside him, no longer just his opponent, but now his equal in respect, Daniel knew that this battle had not been about victory alone. It had been about proving a truth. The strength of humanity was not in brute power, but in will, in the refusal to yield. And that was something no weapon could ever break. The arena was still alive with noise when Daniel and Liara stood side by side. The crowd could not decide if they should cheer or rage, if they should mourn their champion's fall or marvel at the human strength. Some voices rose with anger, calling for another fight, while others shouted in excitement, eager to tell the galaxy what they had just seen. Daniel felt the weight of countless eyes on him, but he did not raise his arms in victory. He stood calmly, his weapon lowered, his face showing neither pride nor arrogance. His victory had not been about proving himself better than Liara. It had been about showing the truth, that humans could not be dismissed as weak. Liara kept her head high. Though her body ached with exhaustion and her pride had taken a deep wound, she did not hide her defeat. She had fought with all her strength and still the human had endured. It was not shameful to admit the truth. In fact, she felt something new growing inside her, a strange respect, one she had never believed she would give to an outsider. The ruling council, who had watched the battle from the royal stands, whispered among themselves. For years they had considered humans an insignificant species, unworthy of mention. Yet here stood a single human who had faced their strongest warrior and prevailed. That was not something that could be ignored. Liara turned toward them, her voice steady and clear despite her exhaustion. "You came to watch me prove our strength," she said to her people. "But today you saw more than that. You saw the truth of another species' spirit. This human fought with a will that did not break, even when his body should have failed him. That is strength too. A strength we would be wise to respect." The words spread across the arena like a shockwave. Her people stared at her, uncertain if they should accept what she said. But the sight of their proud princess standing beside the human warrior, not in anger but in acknowledgement, planted seeds of change in their hearts. Daniel gave a small nod of thanks, though he did not speak. He let her words carry the moment. Later, as the crowd slowly dispersed and the arena grew quiet, Liara walked with Daniel through the halls. The silence between them was not cold but heavy with unspoken thoughts. At last she broke it. "You fought with a strength I did not expect," she admitted. "I thought humans were fragile. I thought breaking you would be easy, but I was wrong." Daniel gave a tired smile. "We are fragile," he said softly. "But fragility doesn't mean weakness, it just means we learn to fight harder. We don't stop, even when we should." Liara looked at him with new eyes. "That is what makes you dangerous," she said, "and what makes you worthy." They reached the great doors of the arena where alien nobles and warriors waited to speak with Daniel. Already whispers filled the air. Some spoke of him with awe, others with envy, but all acknowledged him. His name was no longer unknown. He had earned a place in their memory. When Daniel stepped outside, he saw the stars above the alien world shining brighter than ever. He thought of Earth, far away, and of the people who had never believed their kind could stand against the galaxy's great powers. He imagined the message this moment would send back home. Humans were no longer a forgotten species on the edge of space. They were part of the story now. Liara remained at his side, watching him. She felt something unfamiliar stir within her, a sense of curiosity, even admiration. Her pride as a warrior was not destroyed. It had been reshaped. For the first time, she wondered not only how strong she was, but what she might learn from someone different. That night, the tales spread like wildfire across the stars. Stories of the human warrior who had defeated the undefeated princess reached trading posts, war councils, and even the distant colonies of species who had never heard of Earth. Some laughed in disbelief, others shook their heads, but many listened, with interest. The idea of humanity began to change. In the days that followed, Daniel was summoned to meet with leaders of alien factions. They wanted to know about his people, about Earth, about what kind of strength could create someone like him. For the first time, humanity's name carried weight in the halls of power. Liara, too, found herself questioned. Many asked her if she truly meant what she had said, that humans were worthy of respect. Each time she answered firmly, "Yes. I fought him myself. I know what he is capable of. His people are not to be ignored." Though pride still lingered in her heart, she no longer felt anger at her defeat. Instead, she felt anticipation. The galaxy was vast, filled with endless rivals and allies, and now she realized humans would be part of that future. She found herself wondering what other hidden strengths they carried, and whether she might one day fight beside them rather than against them. For Daniel, the victory was not just personal. It was the start of something greater. Humanity had been noticed. The galaxy would test them, challenge them, and perhaps even fear them, but they would never again be dismissed. As the stars stretched endlessly above, Daniel thought of the words Liara had spoken before the crowd. This human is no weak creature. He is a warrior. The words echoed in his mind, not as a personal triumph, but as a promise. Wherever humans went, they would carry that truth with them. Fragile or not, they were a species that refused to yield. And that, more than anything, was why they would endure among the stars.